Welcome to the Juice Box with Juice Springsteen, covering the week that was in professional wrestling. And hello everybody, and welcome again to another edition of The Juice Box. I am Juice Springsteen here once again. It's been a little while since you've heard my voice in particular here on The Juice Box. Last week, we had the return of Brian and Jay, main event maniacs. WrestleMania 22, John Cena versus Triple H. A very interesting match looking back on it 20 years ago, and took place in Chicago. Very interesting match, crowd dynamic, pretty much everything about that match had a unique flair to it, and those guys covered it in great detail, and I highly recommend going to check those guys out. Main event maniacs here on the Juice Box feed, Brian and Jay. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at JuicySteen, at Juicy Wrestling Closet on Instagram, at JuicySteen here on YouTube as well. Spotify, Amazon Music, JuicySteen.podbean.com, and Apple Podcasts. And if you listen to the show on Apple Podcasts via iTunes or on Spotify, leave a rating and review. It does help the show grow. We will be discussing the week that was here in the Juice Box this week. We're going to go over what happened in AEW land, where we had Chris Jericho return, which, surprised quite a few people, including yours truly. And I'm going to kind of, ponder what that could mean for the future. We're going to talk a little bit about the Dynasty card coming up next week, where we will have predictions for that show. We're going to talk a little bit of the WrestleMania card as it is shaping up. Almost all the matches, I would wager, have been announced, but no nights have been announced, I don't believe, just yet. We do have a host of WrestleMania, which is John Cena. We've got the Hall of Fame getting a few more inductees, so that class, I believe, is all done. And we've got some adjustments to matches that, quite frankly, didn't need them. So we will talk about all that in a more concise episode, as we normally do during these weeks. Try to pack it all in within 20 to 25 minutes. We're going to start off with the AEW of it all. Dynasty coming next week. Vancouver, British Columbia, April 12th. It's going to be the third ever pay-per-view to take place in Canada following the 2023 Forbidden Door and last year's All Out. This is going to be a fun show. We don't have every match announced yet, but we do have FTR taking on Cope and Cage for the AEW World Tag Team Championships, which has been a match, rumored for a while, finally set in stone. And we can discuss, more about where the Young Bucks may fall in this, depending on how the match goes next Sunday. Jon Moxley will defend his AEW Continental Championship against Will Ospreay. Ospreay trying to get back some revenge, some vengeance on Moxley for taking him out. And, for quite a long time, having to have that surgery, that very invasive surgery on his neck. And, he's back. Ospreay's had a few matches since being back into the AEW fold. So, we'll see how that match goes. Like I said, predictions will be next week for that. Tekla defends the AEW Women's World title against Jamie Hayter. We've got Darby Allin taking on Andrade El Idolo, where if Darby wins that match, he will get a future AEW World title match. We've also got, of course, the main event, Kenny by God Omega, the god of professional wrestling, taking on the devil, MJF, Maxwell Jacob Friedman. So, like I said, not the entire card set up, but we are getting closer to that. And I think, we'll kind of finalize it as we roll into this week of Dynamite. And I would wager they're going to do the tailgate brawl or the whatever the 0 hour will be on Sunday. I'm sure they'll do that. Although with the show being on Sunday, they could run Collision on Saturday per the normal hours. But other than that, quite frankly, the biggest news of the week took place in AEW. It was broken earlier in the afternoon that Chris Jericho potentially was on his way back to AEW, or at least had discussions about coming back to AEW and not going back to WWE. And lo and behold, AEW Dynamite was in Winnipeg. Chris Jericho does in fact return, kicks off the show, and was placed right before the contract signing between MJF and Kenny Omega. So, like I said, without going into the predictions side of things just yet, we'll do that next week. It seems to me that Chris Jericho will more than likely get involved in in this match, I'd wager, or at least in the AEW World Title picture for a little bit, or maybe costing someone in that match. There's a lot of angles. He's got a connection with Kenny Omega. He's got a connection with MJF. So there's a lot going on there that I could see happening in regards to Jericho's involvement with the AEW World Title match. As you look at it as a whole, though, it's pretty wild to see him back in AEW. He looked great. He looked shredded. He looked determined. I think he got a bag, and I think he knows he can go to WWE whenever he wants, and it won't necessarily affect him at all. I think the Hall of Fame is ready for him for WWE. I think maybe one last run in WWE is on the table for him. So I have no doubt in my mind that it could happen. And not just happen, but, whenever he kind of sees fit, whenever he feels maybe this is the end of the road, maybe I'd like to just kind of conclude this how I need to. And, I think he will ride off into the sunset in regards to that. So looking forward to seeing what Jericho does in AEW. But, of course, the unknown back in WWE is, in the distance. We just don't know where or how long it'll take to get there. But, like I said, all these matches, yet we'll probably get another 2 to 3 matches put on the card for Dynasty. So, with a week out, you'd hope that they kind of set that straight. I'm sure they've got it ready to go. And look, I've hoped that for a Sunday pay-per-view for AEW, they could go 7 o'clock start and make it a concise 4 hours. That would be great. I don't know if they'll ever do that, and I'll probably be up until the wee hours of Monday morning, like I was for the last show, Revolution. So we'll see how it all shakes out in AEW. Let's go into some other stuff before we get to the WrestleMania card and how that's shaping to be at the moment. I do want to thank the outpouring of support and just, awesome comments, great response, solid feedback for the piece I wrote on the end of WCW. Last week was the 25th anniversary of the final episode of WCW Monday Nitro, and I wanted to celebrate it not by doing a podcast, not by doing a video or anything I've been usually doing. I kind of wanted to tap back into my roots as a writer and I decided to write a more or less a requiem. I kind of called it my love letter to WCW, and I posted that on Twitter/X, and it kind of poured my heart out for what WCW meant to me and explained that in so many words, and I really enjoyed writing it, I gotta tell you. And I was thrilled with the feedback that I got and just the show of support for WCW from a lot of other people. It was just like, I died a little bit too when WCW got sold, or I miss WCW every day. I wish I could watch it again, like live, and relive that. And I'm glad that there are multiple alternatives for pro wrestling in 2026, and it's not just WWE. You've got AEW, you've got TNA, you've got NXT, even though it's under WWE, it's something a little different. There's plenty of stuff to watch. GCW, JCW, New Japan. It really doesn't stop, and it's great to have a plethora of options. So, really was thrilled to see the response, and I was, happy to write such a piece. So, shout out to those who shared that. Let's dive a little bit into the Hall of Fame, as we, I believe, are done announcing the entrance this year. Now, they could announce someone else. I really don't know. We'll see. I, quite frankly, don't know, if they'll add anybody else in. I know that we still could have the Warrior Award hasn't been out there since 2023, so not sure if they'll do that. But let's go to the 2026 class. AJ Styles, of course. Stephanie McMahon, who will apparently be inducted by The Undertaker. Demolition, Axe, and Smash, great tag team. Celebrity Wing, Dennis the Worm Rodman, cannot wait for his speech. And then in the Legacy Wing, we've got Bad News Brown, a legendary late 80s character in WWF. The Ghetto Blaster Inzagiri finisher was incredible back in the day. Very, unorthodox for a man of Bad News Brown, his size. And then Psycho Sid, Sid Vicious, Sid Justice. Just Sid, in the Legacy Wing. Unfortunately, of course, he passed away. I think it was a year or two ago. I can't remember. I want to say it was 2024. So it sucks that he won't be able to give that Hall of Fame speech. I know people will, make memes of Sid, and there are plenty different avenues of meme that Sid has been a part of, whether it was the barbershop where he hit the chair off the can of shaving cream and that can exploded and there was shaving cream all over his face, or being in the segment where the Shockmaster came out and still having to look menacing, the heel Sid coming out to a thunderous babyface ovation at Survivor Series 96 in Madison Square Garden, Goldberg being the guy who compacted Sid's car and Sid saying, "Why me? Why?" As goofy and memey as Sid was, he was such an imposing figure, incredible size and stature. And not only that, but he was authentic and authentically himself as a promo. And I think he would have had a great speech to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. But I am happy that he's getting in. And then the immortal moment now last year, of course, was Bret Hart and Stone Cold Steve Austin in the no DQ submission match with Ken Shamrock as special guest referee, inducted by CM Punk, WrestleMania 13. This year, Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant, one-on-one for the WWF World title at WrestleMania 3. Who knows who will induct this match? Who knows who will accept for these two guys? It would have been incredible to see Hogan talk about this match one more time for everybody. I think it would have been a nice moment. But unfortunately, we will not get to see that as well, with Hogan passing away last summer. So, I think it's a hell of a class. I'm looking forward to these speeches. I probably won't be watching it live, as it will be, I believe, Friday night at midnight Eastern to watch it. So I probably won't watch it live, but I'm thrilled that all these guys and girls are getting in. I think it's an awesome, awesome thing every year to see who gets inducted, accepting the honor. Let's get into WrestleMania and what we've got cooking for WrestleMania. It was announced that John Cena is the host of WrestleMania, and while I might walk back that it was a panic move, at least in those terms, maybe it wasn't a panic move necessarily, but I will say, to sell tickets or what have you so short out of WrestleMania, but I will say that it did seem a little drastic and dramatic to have Cena be announced as host. Cena is not wrestling. Who knows, what he's gonna do or what he'll bring. I also think it's a little frustrating to some fans seeing that Gunther retired John Cena in December, and John Cena was announced having a spot at WrestleMania before Gunther was, because Gunther just got his match, and that match is against Seth freaking Rollins. We'll talk about the Mania card here in a second, but John Cena as host, I'm looking forward to it. I don't know what to expect. There won't be a match, but there probably will be some sort of interaction with probably Gunther at the show, maybe some other folks at the show. We will see how that all goes, but I'm looking forward to Cena hosting. I'm looking forward to the Danhausen effect, what that will mean. Will Danhausen curse John Cena? We saw Danhausen cursing the referee on accident this past week instead, and the referee going to count 3, and his arm was affected by the curse. It got a cramp, and he couldn't count the 3. So Danhausen making his impact without wrestling a match, as I have been standing by since Danhausen entered WWE. I don't think he should wrestle a match. It doesn't help anybody, including himself, any other talent. He works and serves best as a backstage / funny segment character, cursing wrestlers, getting involved in matches in that regard. So, looking forward to seeing Danhausen on a big stage like WrestleMania. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and we'll see how he interacts with a guy like John Cena. I think there's a lot of money to be made and viral clips to be had. Let's talk about that WrestleMania card as we get close to this happening, 2 weeks away. April 18th, April 19th. No match on either night have been confirmed. You could surmise that at least you could say CM Punk and Roman Reigns will conclude night 2. That's what I would wager. But let's talk about it. 12 matches announced so far. CM Punk, Roman Reigns, World Heavyweight Championship. The build has been interesting. It started off incredible with the verbal insults back and forth, and I also enjoyed, Punk getting the one-up on Roman after being called old. I think both guys had a week each of looked at, as the top guy in the feud, that each put the other through the announce table. So there have been moments for both in regards to having the upper hand in this feud towards WrestleMania. Additionally, as we go through here, we've got the other side of the coin. Cody Rhodes, Randy Orton, undisputed WWE title. Now, what has transpired in the last 24 hours has sent a lot of people into hysteria, and not for the right reasons. Randy Orton for weeks has been getting calls and talking to somebody, benefactor or someone to help, or, a hired gun, a secret weapon, something of that effect to help him out in this feud with Cody as they get closer to WrestleMania. And Randy's trying to get that elusive 15th world title. which would launch him ahead of Triple H, breaking that tie of 14 world titles, being third all-time, standing alone behind Ric Flair and John Cena only. And who was the benefactor? Who was that secret man? Was it Bob Orton? Was it The Rock? Was it Vince? It was Pat McAfee. And Pat McAfee, while I enjoy on commentary and I enjoy his in-ring work outside of creatively being so close to beating Gunther when I felt Gunther should have demolished a guy like Pat McAfee, even though Pat's a great athlete, he should be taken, not less seriously in the ring, but he shouldn't be going toe-to-toe with a guy that ended up taking out John Cena. I mean, it just doesn't work that well for me in that regard, but that's in the past. Yet Pat does this low blow thing. He takes out Cody. He then cuts a very long and kind of unnecessarily long promo about, the IWC and how, the fans always want one thing and then complain about everything else anyway, and how wrestling right now sucks and how it needs to get better and all these things. And it'll be better when Randy Orton wins his 15th world championship and helps restore pro wrestling, which I find ironic for a few reasons. Last year Cena had, he had the Rock at Elimination Chamber, but he had Travis Scott. And then at WrestleMania, John Cena did have just Travis Scott to help him, quote, ruin wrestling. And now Randy Orton gets the help of a celebrity, Pat McAfee, to help Orton get back wrestling and save wrestling. And, for the business is what they're running with instead of for the brand, for the business. And I don't hate the idea. I just hate that we were given this phone call thing for the reveal to be Pat McAfee. I just feel like it's a little flat. It doesn't have a lot of juice to it. I would like to think that we get something else in addition to Pat at WrestleMania, but I don't know if they'll do that. If they do that, though, it almost comes off as if they would have pivoted late to get this to happen. If they added another person into this dynamic to save the angle, and I just don't like that. I wish it would have been someone else. Why couldn't Orton and Cody just hold the story of legacy and how this has been a thing for 15 years and now it's culminating? The story was already there, and they really haven't acknowledged it to the extent that I thought that they would. So it is what it is. I'm looking forward to the match. I hope there's not a lot of, BS in the match. I don't want to see Pat McAfee get uber involved in this thing. But I'll wait and see. I don't know how it's all going to turn out. I always let it play out, too. So I'm willing to see. But the fans were not happy with the Pat McAfee reveal. And, apparently they had Cody go out towards the end of the show and cut a, shoot promo on why TKO and all these guys want Pat McAfee around and why it's so important, and creatively why is WWE so down right now, which is funny considering Roman Reigns buried the product and then ended up getting the Royal Rumble win and going on to WrestleMania main event night too. So all of this seems like a manufactured plot of Unreal Season 3. And I hate that this is where we're at with, the new kayfabe. Like, the fact that it's pronounced like you're calling it that when kayfabe used to just be in the ether. Now it's a thing where, WWE loves to swerve the audience or swerve the IWC. Shouldn't they be just trying to entertain everybody that watches the show? Because being swerved is WCW 2000. Swerve for the sake of being swerved. It's lame. It's not entertaining. It seems desperate. And it's just not that exciting. Sorry. I don't know how else to put it, but I'm willing to see what happens. So I'm not going to just totally rule it out. WrestleMania is coming up in 2 weeks. We still got 2 episodes of Raw and 2 episodes of SmackDown left. I'll let it play out. Additionally, we've got Stephanie Vaquer, Liv Morgan for the women's world title, Rhea Bloody Ripley versus Jade Cargill for the women's WWE Women's Championship, Obafemi versus Brock Lesnar in a singles match. Straight up, I would love to see this match open up night 1 of WrestleMania on ESPN for that first hour. AJ Lee defends her Intercontinental title with the women's side against Becky Lynch. Trick Williams challenges Sami Zayn for the United States Championship. Seemingly, Trick will have Lil Yachty in his corner or coming out with him, which will be pretty cool. Love the celebrity interaction for WrestleMania, which, again, I think Cody Rhodes, you could see Jelly Roll coming in. Maybe we'll get some sort of tag match. I don't know what the hell is going on, but they love not to force the celebrity interactions, but they don't come off as, organic as they might once have. So, we'll see, but Drew McIntyre, Jacob Fatu, unsanctioned match. Finn Balor, who I still think will be the demon for this, taking on Dominic Mysterio one-on-one. So that's 9 matches. We got one more here. Seth Rollins versus Gunther. Seth Rollins was probably going to face Braun Breaker or Bronson Reed. Both those guys got injured. Gunther was more than likely going to take on Rey Mysterio, perhaps even for Mysterio's career. He got injured, so now Gunther, Seth Rollins, one-on-one. 10 singles matches for WrestleMania, which is pretty damn interesting. I like that. I like the one-on-one nature. It's going to be fascinating to see. Gunther and Seth, I think, is going to be a great match, especially in ring. These guys are horses. They can go. Gunther's proved it. Seth has proved it time and time again. WrestleMania after WrestleMania. Who will win? Who should win? Remains to be seen. We'll talk about that in a couple of weeks for the WrestleMania predictions show. We've got the Dynasty predictions next week, WrestleMania predictions the following week. We'll probably have more programming during the WrestleMania week as well, as we normally do during that week. More details later on. But the 2 other matches that are not singles matches at WrestleMania, Fatal 4-Way Tag Match for the women's tag titles. The Bella Twins, Brie and Nikki, taking on Lyra Valkyria and Bayley, taking on Charlotte Flair and Alexa Bliss. All challenging Nia Jax, Lash Legend, the Irresistible Forces, the women's tag team champions. Look, I think this is going to be fun. I just looking at it straight up, I think this is the Bella Twins match to lose. I think the world tag titles are a perfect avenue for them right now, and I think it would give a lot of cachet to the women's tag titles. So that's where I stand right now. And then, you don't have to have Lash or Nia get pinned for them to lose. So I think you can work around this. And then we've got a fatal 5-way ladder match for the Intercontinental title. I would prefer a 6th man. Who knows if we'll get that guy. Maybe Carmelo Hayes could sneak his way in after being left out of the card entirely, not being a part of the U.S. title scene with Trick and Sami Zayn, which is really frustrating that they couldn't find a match at WrestleMania for Carmelo Hayes. Are you kidding me? But fatal 5-way ladder match for the Intercontinental title. Rusev, JD McDonough, Dragon Lee, Javon Evans, and Penta. My God. Rusev is that wild card, yet he's going to be able to pick up ladders, pick up other superstars. It's going to be one hell of a spectacle, and I cannot wait for WrestleMania. This is, the best time of the year. We got an AEW pay-per-view next weekend. We've got WrestleMania the following weekend. I've got Bruno Forever 2, the local show here in Pittsburgh. 3 straight weeks of shows. I think the following week, actually maybe the week after that actually, would be Backlash in, I believe, Tampa, taking place on May 9th. So that'll be a little after that, but we got a Saturday night's main event also in May. Just a lot of cool stuff going on as we progress forth in the timeline here in pro wrestling. Always a great time as we get to WrestleMania, but when you got AEW, you've got multiple shows. I'm looking forward to, personally, Joey Janela's Spring Break 10. coming up WrestleMania weekend, where we've got Joey Janela taking on -1, a.k.a. Brody Lee Jr., and you've also got the incredible match, the Sandman's final match, taking on the Invisible Man. They've promoted that in an incredible way. I strongly suggest you suspend your disbelief and have fun for a little bit while you watch wrestling and check out that show and stop being such a tight ass. It's professional wrestling. So, man, 30 minutes flew by. Love always chatting about pro wrestling here on the Juice Box. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at Juicy Steen, at Juicy Wrestling Closet on Instagram, at Juicy Steen on YouTube, Spotify, JuicySteen.podbean.com, as I said, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts via iTunes, Amazon Music. If you listen to the show, The Juice Box with Juice Springsteen, on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify via iTunes, leave a rating and review. Helps the show grow. Appreciate the support. Appreciate the listenership. Appreciate the readers of my WCW love letter piece that I had last week. I will also be featured on the Greg Cherry show this Tuesday, I believe. I'll be promoting that. Shout out to Brian and Jay for their main event Maniacs episode last week. I will be doing the Dynasty predictions for AEW's next pay-per-view next week, potentially with a guest, who knows, working out the kinks to that. And then WrestleMania predictions, plus WrestleMania week as a whole. Look to have some more programming during that week as well. So enjoy what you've got going on this weekend. We've got a couple more Raws, a couple more SmackDowns, and one more episode of Dynamite and Collision before all these major shows take place. It's a great time to be a pro wrestling fan. Spring has sprung, and everything's turning great here for pro wrestling as we go through this week by week here on the Juice Box. So, I am Juice Springsteen. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and I will see you guys next week for the AEW Dynasty pay-per-view prediction show right here on the Juice Box. That was the Juice Box with Juice Springsteen. Make sure to subscribe to the Juice Box wherever you listen to podcasts.